Penn State 10, Notre Dame 6.
To the Prudential College scoreboard, there is a lot to discuss. To the probable eventual delight of either Fiesta or Citrus Bowl scouts, Minnesota upset second-ranked Michigan in Ann Arbor today. The only Minnesota score not set up by a Michigan turnover was the game winner, a 30-yard field goal on the last play by Chip Lowmiller. Meanwhile, Oklahoma did not attempt to pass in beating Colorado 28-0. A Colorado cheerleader hit on the head by a bottle in this game is now reported to be okay with a mild concussion at a Boulder hospital. It was a game in which Colorado's hopes for an Orange Bowl berth went down the drain, largely on the running of Patrick Collins, who scored the first of his 2 touchdown runs in the first quarter. And there's a look at the Colorado male cheerleader who was beamed by a bottle and who was taken off the field strapped to a stretcher and now reported at a Boulder hospital to be doing okay, sitting up and communicating. Nebraska leads Kansas 56-0 in the fourth quarter. Nebraska and Oklahoma will now meet to determine which of those two will go to the Orange Bowl. Ohio State, with its 9th straight victory, 30-17 over Wisconsin. The big story as you look ahead to next week's game between Ohio State and Michigan in Columbus is that Jim Costas, the Buckeye quarterback, played only sparingly in the game after suffering a shoulder injury in the first half. He is regarded as okay to play next week. Ole Miss was beaten by Tennessee 22-10. The go-ahead touchdown for Tennessee was scored on a touchdown pass from Joey Francis from Jeff Francis to Joey Clinkscales. This made it 15-10 as Tennessee came from down 10-9. 2-point conversion try failed. They later added an insurance touchdown, knocked Ole Miss out of a chance for the Southeastern Conference Championship and the Sugar Bowl berth. Alabama is now coming on late in the game, beating Temple 24-6. Nation's leading rusher Paul Palmer, 85 yards through 3 quarters. Bobby Humphrey of Alabama, over 100 yards again with 3 touchdowns in the game. Baylor leading Rice 17-10 in the third quarter. Texas Tech and SMU. It is 10-0 SMU in the third quarter as Texas Tech chasing its first bowl bid in 9 years, falling in that game. Clemson and Maryland, the quarantined coaches bowl. Both Ross and Ford upstairs in the press box with headsets on. 7-7 in the second quarter. North Carolina State 7-2-1 after a victory today against Duke in the rain, and the Wolfpack will close out against Western Carolina at home. Bowl scouts from the Fiesta Peach All-America and Hall of Fame there to watch them. Sun, Florida Citrus, Fiesta, Gator, Freedom, and Holiday all in Seattle. UCLA and Washington tied at 7 in the second quarter. Boston College 7-3, 6 straight wins for the first time since 1974. Troy Stratford rushed for 184 yards. Peach Bowl, Hall of Fame Bowl scouts, both on hand. And what they saw was another good performance by Sean Halloran, the BC quarterback, as he produced this 66-yard touchdown pass to Darren Flutie, one of 2 TD passes on the day for Halloran. BC 7-3 after that victory with Holy Cross left to play. Pittsburgh beat Rutgers 20-6, and that will hurt Rutgers' bowl chances. Illinois upset Indiana, likewise hurting Indiana's bowl chances, 21-16. And the last play of the game, Dave Cramey, the Indiana quarterback, scrambled to the 10-yard line of Illinois, but the Hoosiers had no timeouts remaining. Lorenzo White sat out most of the game. Northwestern leads Michigan State 24-21 in the fourth quarter. Iowa pounding Purdue 42-7 in the fourth quarter.
New Year's Day. Here's Al Trautwig.
Halftime opening, take 1. Finds evidence of past victims.
Boy, isn't this a scary scene? I can tell the Nittany Lions been through here already. Look what he did to Alabama. Clawed him to death. And look at this. This was a closer battle. But again, Maryland got clawed. To find him.
Do not attempt to unlock the secret of number 1. Not yet.
So we wait till January 1st. No big deal.
The search leads to the mall.
Nittany Lion. Has he been here?
Yeah, he was here. That's a good trip for us to take care of everybody on a quick trip.
A quick trip?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Thanks. Sir, can you help me? Looking for Penn State's Nittany Lion.
Just here. Just missed him. He went down into the boarding area.
What flight was he on?
You could have been on any flight. Flight 1 to Tempe, Flight 2 Orlando, Flight 3 to Miami, or Flight 4 to New Orleans. Any one of them.
Thanks. I'll try to catch him.
So each of the universities will receive from Chevrolet $1,000 for their general scholarship fund.
Quarter with a 16-14 lead at Anaheim, but the story is the NFL debut of Jim Everett. He relieves Steve Dills early in the game for the Rams, and on his second pass of the day, he'll hit Henry Ellard with this 34-yard touchdown. A bit later, he comes back with a 24-yarder to Barry Redden to account for all the Rams scoring, and they trail 16-14 early in the third. The Raiders have just gone to halftime with a 17-7 lead over the Browns. Another good day for Jim Plunkett. The 38-year-old, oldest quarterback in the NFL, draws the start today after his fine relief performance at Dallas, and the guy he hit for 2 scores a week ago, Dokie Williams, is on the receiving end of this 46-yarder. A bit later, he threw a 3-yarder to Todd Christensen. Raiders with the 17-7 lead. In the game you're watching, it's been all defense. 31-7, Denver in front. They've scored off punt formation with Chris Norman throwing 43 to Steve Watson. Gerald Wilhite, a 70-yard punt return for a score, and the defense does the job here. Randy Robbins sacks Kenny. He fumbles. Andre Townsend picks it up and rolls 7 yards for a score. Very next play from scrimmage after the kick, Carl Mecklenburg forces Kenny to fumble again. They recover at the 1, and Wilhite scores from there. So the Orange Crush has done it today at 31-7, and the Broncos apparently will reestablish a 2-game lead in the AFC West. Dallas and San Diego go to the third quarter at San Diego. Dan Fouts is at quarterback for the Chargers. They trail 10-7. Look at this, big surprise. Indianapolis makes it close against the Jets. 14-9 as they go to the third quarter at the Meadowlands. Ken O'Brien has thrown 2 touchdown passes to Wesley Walker for the Jets. Walker has now caught 11 for scores this year. But on the pregame show, Paul McGuire, Cincinnati sacks the Seattle quarterbacks, Craig and Gilbert, 5 times. They win 34-7. Boomer Esiason throws for better than 300 yards. First time ever a Chuck Knox-coached Seattle team has lost 4 in a row. The Giants go to 9-2. Momentarily, they're half a game in front of Washington, NFC East. Skins play at home tomorrow night against the 49ers. Here is the key play in the game. They are down by a point late in the fourth quarter. 4th and 17. Do or die. Phil Simms to Bobby Johnson, good for 22 as he's banged out of bounds. Keeps the drive alive. Raul Allegre then hits his 5th field goal of the game in the waning moments to win it for the Giants, 22-20. Chicago trailed 10-3 at Atlanta at halftime. They come back to win 13-10. Here's the key play. Trailing by a touchdown, Mike Tomczak, who had been intercepted twice, once for a touchdown in the first half, pumps this one deep to Emery Moorhead. And by the time the play is over, he's covered 85 yards before he's caught from behind at the 1. Tomczak scores on the next play to tie the game. Kevin Butler then hits a 44-yard field goal. The Bears are 9-2 with a 13-10 victory. Miami gets 4 touchdown passes and better than 400 yards throwing from Dan Marino. He has 27 scoring throws to lead the league. They win at Buffalo, 34-24. New Orleans is now 6-5, winning at St. Louis, 16-7. All the scoring in the first half in Pittsburgh. Then they just cruised after that, and they win it 21-10 against Houston. Detroit sacked Randall Cunningham 11 times. Then Eddie Murray had a 40-yard field goal with 12 seconds to play. The Lions win it 13-11 at the Vet. And in the Battle of the Bays, Green Bay defeats Tampa Bay 31-7. Randy Wright throws for 3 touchdowns.
Now they're in great field position.
Here's 2nd and 9. Wolverines trailing Ohio State 17-13. Will run. Now he shovels it off. Beautiful job to Perriman, who was working down 13. Michigan trailing, but on the move. They have a 1st and goal from the 8. Morris hammers to the 1 and in for the touchdown. Touchdown, Michigan. He would not be denied.
Significant game today being played at University Park, Pennsylvania, where the Nittany Lions of Penn State are trying to do their part in setting up the Fiesta Bowl matchup with number 1 rated Miami, and they lead 27-7 in the fourth quarter. In the first quarter of the game, Pittsburgh got a Craig Hayward touchdown, which was the first quarter TD against Penn State in 17 games. But after that touchdown, Penn State responded immediately as Blair Thomas took the kickoff and went 91 yards, the first Penn State kickoff return touchdown since Kurt Warner turned the trick 6 years ago against West Virginia. That put the Lions back on top 10-7, and they pretty much had things their own way since that time. Of course, remember, Pitt lost quarterback John Congemi a few games back. They tried to get an extra year of eligibility for Sal Janilla. The NCAA said no. Now Janilla is in the game playing. Now, DJ Dozier had this 26-yard run in the second quarter that made it 17-7 Penn State at the time. And immediately after Dozier scored, there was some extracurricular confrontation in the end zone. Officials issued personal fouls against both Penn State and Pittsburgh. Joe Paterno didn't like it one bit. You can see him coming on to the umpire on the sideline. Very unusual to see Paterno that heated, and you have to wonder if he's also going to be that heated up on January 2 when Penn State meets Miami in the Fiesta Bowl, of course contingent on a Miami victory over East Carolina on Thanksgiving night. Meanwhile, at Columbus, Michigan leads Ohio State 19-17 in the third quarter. The Wolverines have trailed most of the way in this game to determine the Big Ten representative to the Rose Bowl. They have just gone ahead, and remember, the winner of the game will be playing Arizona State in Pasadena on New Year's Day. Cotton Bowl bid up for grabs. Texas A&M trying to nail it down with 2 season-closing wins in the Southwest Conference. They lead TCU 40-0 in the third quarter. It's been an interesting week. Jackie Sherrill said of TCU, they have the best talent in the Southwest Conference. Why aren't they winning? Jim Wacker said, tell Sherrill to mind his own business. Meanwhile, Keith Woodside scored on this 14-yard run, or 15-yard run, to make it 14-0 Texas A&M in the first half. Kevin Murray threw this touchdown pass of 10 yards to Shea Walker. Murray in the first half, 18 of 26, 221 yards and 2 TDs. Again, 4 teams in the running to go to the Cotton Bowl from the Southwest Conference, but only Texas A&M controls its own destiny. Penn and Cornell playing to determine the championship with the Ivy League. Penn looking for its first unbeaten season since 1904 on 2 Jim Krochickia touchdown passes. They lead Cornell 17-7 in the third quarter. Holy Cross jumped on top of Boston College 14-0 today as the Crusaders were trying to wrap up an 11-0 season. But since that time on the muddy field in Worcester, it has been all Boston College, and the dream has been shattered for the moment for Holy Cross. Here's what it looked like in the first quarter, though, as after a Holy Cross touchdown, moments later following a turnover, Gordon Lockbaum scored on that outstanding pass and run play from 29 yards out. It was 14-0 Holy Cross. Very shortly, BC came back on this Halloran to Kelvin Martin 14-yard touchdown pass. That made it 14-7. Moments later, they scored on a Halloran to Martin 10-yard touchdown pass to tie it at 14. Since then, it's been all BC. Halloran 17 of 21 for 210 yards, 3 TDs in the first half. BC headed to the Hall of Fame game to play against Georgia in Tampa, December 23rd. Lee Saltz has 2 touchdown passes for Temple, and they lead Rutgers 19-14 in the third quarter. Paul Palmer has been held to under 70 yards to this point in the game for Temple. Syracuse at West Virginia, Mountaineers leading 17-14 in the third quarter. Don Nealon, the West Virginia coach, rumored a candidate at Purdue and Wisconsin as he's completing his first losing season ever at Morgantown. Wisconsin at Michigan State, Lorenzo White has played only 1 play. And Dave Yarima has taken up the slack for the Michigan State offense. Spartans lead 20-13 in the third quarter. Indiana at Purdue, game for the Old Oaken Bucket. Purdue leads 10-0 at halftime, even with a 6-5 record. If they lose this game, Indiana apparently slated to go to the All-American Bowl to play against Florida State in Birmingham on New Year's Eve. Northwestern at Illinois, 14-3 Northwestern in what will be Francis Pay's last game as interim coach at Northwestern, again, after what has been a good season for Pay and the Wildcats. He has announced that he is not a candidate to remain there on the job. Mississippi State versus Ole Miss. Winner to play Texas Tech in the Independence Bowl. Right now, that looks like Ole Miss bouncing back from last week's loss to Tennessee, leading 17-3 in the fourth quarter. Kentucky at Tennessee in the game for the battered beer barrel. Volunteers lead 7-3 in the third quarter. The winner apparently to play Minnesota in the Liberty Bowl bowl, which has really lost some of its clout in recent years. South Carolina at Clemson. Clemson locked to go to the Gator Bowl versus Stanford, trailing South Carolina 21-18 in the third quarter in one of the roughest and least predictable rivalries in college football. Again, Clemson will be taking its 40,000 ticket buyers to Jacksonville against Stanford on the 27th. Western Carolina at North Carolina State. Dick Sheridan inherited a 3-8 team at State, turned them around to 8-2-1, and they won today, and they're slated to go to the Peach Bowl to play Virginia Tech. Georgia Tech at Wake Forest. If Tech wins, it may go to the Bluebonnet Bowl. And right now, Wake Forest leads 24-21 in the fourth quarter, playing without Mike Elkins, the quarterback, and 8 other players. Carolina leads Duke 24-21 at halftime. North Carolina in the picture with the inside track to go to the Aloha Bowl on ABC December 27 against Arizona. Of course, the Tar Heels need to win today and hope that Notre Dame doesn't state a strong case for itself tonight against LSU. So that's a partial picture of what's happening at this moment in the most significant games in college football. Those teams are playing tonight or are idle, and we'll be back with more right after this. Utah, and BYU leads at 14-0 in the second quarter. The BYU quarterback Steve Lindsley was booed in Provo last week when he had to be yanked for sophomore reserve Bob Jensen, but today he's led 2 touchdown drives and the Cougars lead 14-zip. Lafayette played Lehigh for the 122nd time today in the most played game in all of college football, and it was Lafayette which won at 28-23 as a running back named Bruce McIntyre carried 35 times for 251 yards at a touchdown. Yale and Harvard very quickly, 21-17 Harvard in the fourth quarter. Dartmouth against Princeton is Joe Ukika's last game at Dartmouth, 28-6 Dartmouth in the third quarter, looking for an upset. Brown at Columbia, 38-0 Brown in the fourth quarter. And New Mexico at Memphis State, it is 10-0 Memphis State in the second quarter.
Jimmy. Walter, touchdown Wolverines.
Carter touchdown pass, the game for Ohio State has narrowed Michigan's lead to 26-24. And in the Penn State-Pittsburgh game, Penn State starting quarterback John Schaefer left the game in the third quarter, was icing his hands on the sideline. No final report yet on the injury. His backup, Matt Kisner, played well. All yours, Keith.
And Nebraska comes out at the 15, first down. Handed inside to Ken Kalen, the fullback, and Kalen is just clobbered by one of those linebackers. Looked like Dottie Jones, number 50, was the man that really hit him.